Okay, well, welcome everybody, and welcome to the October 2025 meeting of the Dealey Plaza UK Society. And we are delighted to welcome DP UK member Paul Cummings and also welcome the research collaborator James Day, who are going to share their research into something which at first glance appears to be trivial, but doesn't turn out to be. And their research began with asking themselves this question: why was a laundry truck parked at the corner of Elm and Houston outside the Daltex building in Dealey Plaza on the day that JF Kennedy was shot? And when they started looking into this small detail, um, they realized that it opened up a much bigger story. Though they discovered, as you can see from the screen, that the truck belonged to the Clean Towel and Linen Service Company, a firm which has links to organized crime, covert intelligence operations, and even international networks tied to Cold War intrigue. They discovered the story of Robert A. Lesh, who was a handyman linked to the company who died under mysterious circumstances. That's all too true in the story, isn't it? As well as, I may have get this gentleman's name wrong, guys, so please correct me, Jean Sautre, a fugitive tied to the assassination attempt on Charles de Gaulle, and who was allegedly was in Dallas on that day. So the thing that's fascinating is that this is history hides in plain sight. A part laundry truck may seem insignificant, but it could be the key to understanding the whole network of relationships that lay behind the assassination. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Paul and James as they take us deeper into this remarkable investigation. So, over to you, Paul and James.
Thank you, Tony. Good morning, everybody. Before I start, I'd just like to say a few thank yous. First, the big thank you is to Bobby Lesh. That's Robert Lesh's daughter, who opened her heart and shared with me stories about her father to an unknown stranger. So I want to thank her for that. And secondly, James Day. I wouldn't be here without James. This research probably would have taken more years, but with James being on the West Coast, it really did help. So I want to say thank you to those people.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay, so let's start this off. The research. Who owned the company was one of my first goals. The second goal is employees who might be a candidate as a truck driver. And the third was make contact with families of Clean Towel employees. Obviously, we're looking back to, the early 60s. So obviously, a lot of the people that we're probably looking into are deceased. So I wanted to reach out and touch with the families if I could. First person here is Manuel Tourette's. He was the owner of Clean Towel. Clean Towel is incorporated at 2431 Weisenberger in Fort Worth, Texas in June of 1958. What's curious about that whole situation was that in the Articles of Incorporation in the state of Texas, Manuel Tourette's is not listed. Mark Sutphin was the GM from 1958 to January of 1967. His name will be coming up. The facility, about 12,000 square feet, estimated about 25 to 30 employees, about 5 to 7 trucks. How did I come with that? Well, in my hometown here, we have a family laundry business that's been around for over 70 years. So I talked to the owner, who's generational in owning it, and I gave him the square footage, and he said 25 to 30 employees with 5 to 7 trucks. That 5 to 7 trucks, which we'll talk hopefully a little bit later on, also might include a truck that was kind of for emergency situations in case the truck went down. And last, Sutphin worked for Tourette's in 1940. He signed a contract in 1958 to manage. This is the World War II draft card for Mark Sutphin. And as you can see here, if you look at the employer's name, it says Crescent Towel and Linen Supply Company. That is Manuel Tourette's company. He owned that company in LA. Let's just jump right into this, shall we, about who is the best candidate for truck driver. And there it is, George Lincoln, nicknamed Link Hughes. He was born in Willard, Missouri in 1914. Stated in his son's obituary, George Hughes during World War II was a naval medic and served in the Pacific. Hughes' enlistment of Armed Services Los Angeles in 1944 with the civil occupation of semi-skilled chauffeur and drivers, bus, taxi, truck, and tractor. In the fall of 1958, Hughes moved to Fort Worth from Southern California, lived within 2 miles of Meacham Airfield. We'll get into that a little bit. And he began to work with Clean Towel. He was second command, likely hired by
Enjoy
Turrets
your breakfast. Yep, you can enjoy
to
your
look after his
sermon.
business interests.
A sermon. I think it
In
is a rabbi.
1963, Fort Worth director listed him as supervisor. And in January of 1967, he took over as GM from Sutphin and backed Turrets in a lawsuit. That's going to be notable for the simple fact that in 1967, the owner, Turrets, took Sutphin to court in regards to possibly what was the issue? James, you remember the issue on that lawsuit? It was kind of like proprietary information pricing.
Insider trading business secrets or industry secrets. That was the accusation, right?
Yeah, thank you. As you can see here, this is from the 1963 Fort Worth directory, and I've got it circled there. G-Link, that's Hughes, supervisor, Clean Towel and Linen Company. Now in the parentheses, which is going to be important later on, that's always the spouse, and that's his spouse, Mary. Jumping into Robert Allen Lesh, Bob. Whenever I talked to Bobby Lesh, his daughter, she didn't refer him as dad. It was always as Bob. So there's Bobby, his daughter, and Bob Lesh. Bob was born in Kansas City in 1931. His family moved to Loveland, Colorado in the late 30s. His father worked at the Great Western Sugar Company in Colorado, had various jobs throughout his life, such as farming and automotive assembly. Bob's mother, Mabel, had a teaching degree, but her father forbade her to work. Kind of get a little background here, perhaps, of Bob and where maybe he got his construction gene, so to speak, and that is his grandfather was a construction engineer on bridges. In the early 1950s, while living in Arbella, Missouri, kind of an interesting note here. In 1950 census, Bob and his father is listed in the census in Arbella, but his mom is not. And Bobby Lesh doesn't even know where her grandmother is. So couldn't find Mabel anywhere. So kind of a little bit interesting tidbit. In 1955, Bob moved to Fort Worth. Bobby Lesh has indicated she believes it was for the police academy. She does not know how he got down there. There's no family, there's no relatives down there, nothing like that. He just ended up in Fort Worth. And as you probably read on the articles, Bob had an expertise in electronic and bugging equipment and had a car phone in 1964. Bobby told me while they were trick-or-treating in Phoenix, where they were living in 1964, all the kids kind of swarmed the car because Bob had this car phone. So I thought that was kind of a cool thing, but think about that. In 1964, Bob Lesh had a car phone. In 1956, he worked for Durham Construction in Fort Worth. The owner, Ray T. Durham, had some interesting travels between 56 and 61. He was in Guatemala, Liberia, and Saudi Arabia, and was listed as living in Tanzania, South Africa in 1970. Lesh was shot while with his wife on a patrol. He was helping out a night patrol volunteer group, and they went into a building and through the dark and going through some doors, Bob got shot in the abdomen. We're going to move here into 1958. His employer was the Texas Prison Systems, which I'll show you here, and it's listed in his marriage certificate. And if that's not enough, in 1961, his car was dynamited. He wasn't in it, but his car was dynamited. This is the marriage certificate. And if you look at the top right corner, we've got it highlighted there. It says Texas Department of Corrections, Huntsville, Texas. So we're assuming at this point in time that Bob, probably about 1958, might, keyword being might, have lived down in Huntsville. I'm going to pass this off to James because this is kind of James's area. And James, why don't you go ahead and take this over?
Thank you, Paul, and just wanted to thank you too for bringing me on. We didn't know each other until earlier this year, And so anyway, thanks for the journey. Zionism and clean towel. Zionism was not my area of expertise at all. It only became an area of expertise because of its involvement with this laundry facility, this linen supply company. So there's 2 points here that I'll break down: what is political Zionism and what it is not. It is an indisputable, irrefutable fact that there was a Zionist presence on Elm Street when the president was shot. And what I mean by that is that it was in in the clean towel vehicle. Paul talked about manual turrets as being from Los Angeles. This is very interesting because he was a pretty committed Zionist. I should say here, when we're talking about it, we're talking about political Zionism. I'm not getting into anything about the Jewish religion. If when I talk about David Ferry, he's a Catholic. And so I'm going to be talking about the Catholic Church. Delphine Roberts was excommunicated from the Catholic Church. I'm going to be talking about that, for instance. Here we're going to be talking about people who were involved in the establishment of the state of Israel. That's what it is. So I have no other agenda other than just reporting the facts here. And so when I get into that, we're talking about a foreign government, basically, Israel, and Americans who were involved in the establishment of the state of Israel. However illegal it was done, and there were illegal efforts made by the people behind Clean Towel in establishing the state of Israel. Uh, so I just do, Paul. I think I'll break that down a little bit more and then go back to the Christian Zionists. Is there anything else on my? Let me just jump ahead here, or can you just jump ahead to the next slide, or is this just my own? Okay, great. Thank you, Paul. Okay,
Yep.
so as I said, Manuel Turrets is from Los Angeles. He is the owner of Clean Towel out of Fort Worth. He has a number of different facilities that he operates around California, and he's got one in Chicago. He's got obviously the one in Fort Worth. He's got one in Fresno, but really he's out of Los Angeles. One of his and Paul showed that his Los Angeles company was not called Clean Towel; it was called Crescent Towel and Linen. This is over in Crescent Heights in Los Angeles. One of his early clients was the Angelus Temple. If anyone knows the Angelus Temple, this was where Wesley Swift came from, who was a very hard right white supremacist. If anyone studies the radical right aspect of the Kennedy assassination, Wesley Swift is right there. He was very close with William Potter Gale, one of a colonel under General Willoughby, and they fomented paramilitary brigades to foster their white supremacists. So they were very anti-JFK always. So I thought that was interesting already that one of Turrett's clients was Angelus Temple. Angelus Temple was located in that general area of where the company was anyway in Los Angeles. So it makes sense. But it became very interesting for me because the Life Bible College is associated with Angelus Temple, and Wesley Swift was a student there. And there was another individual at the same time that Clean Towel or that Crescent Towel was servicing this Life Bible College. His name was Theodore Jackman, Dr. Theodore Jackman. If you remember, Joseph Miltier, who was the far right radical KKK member who prophesied that the official story would be that the president would be taken out from a high rise building with a high powered rifle and quickly picked up and that the assassin would be quickly picked up and pegged on an unsuspecting person. He told us, we know this from the recording made by Willie Somerset and that he gave to the Miami police. After the assassination, we think Joseph Miltier was actually in that same shot as the Clean Towel. We think Joseph Miltier was probably present in Dealey Plaza. At any rate, he was picked up the next day by a fellow called Willie Somerset, and they went to a Klan meeting in the Carolinas. On the way, this is per Somerset later telling his informant, his officer, that Miltier mentioned three names that were involved in the assassination, and one of these was Theodore Jackman. And Theodore Jackman happened to be an instructor at the Life Bible College at the same time as Manuel Turret's his crescent towel was servicing that school and that church. He was a known member of the John Birch Society. The biggest thing that he made known publicly was that there were Congolese troops training in Georgia and getting ready to kind of inciting the scare that that the country was being taken over by people from Congo. But before that, before he got into far right rhetoric, Jackman was a known Christian Zionist for the Zionist Organization of America. So he would go around as like the Christian representative of the organization, uh, promoting the Christian Zionist aspect of Zionism. Okay. All right, we can go on here. Manuel Turrets was in Lisbon the very time of the 1960 election. We mentioned this, and that's it. That's the travel manifest there. We mentioned this because for two reasons. Lisbon was neutral. It was the espionage capital of the world during World War II, but it was also the wartime headquarters of the Joint Distribution Committee. This is the umbrella of the United Jewish Appeal, the UJA, which had enormous influence in raising funds from outside the Holy Land to fund the establishment of the State of Israel. Also for Lisbon, an OAS assassin, I believe this is John Swetra, mentioned by Tony at the beginning, visited Lisbon to recruit CIA support for an attack on Charles de Gaulle. This name will come up later. Swetra and the OAS tried to assassinate Charles de Gaulle in 1962, at least. There were plenty more attempts on de Gaulle's life.
Ooh.
All right, thank you. So when we're looking down at Fort Worth being the place where Clean Towels facility was, there was a connection there with local committed ardent Zionists, and I'll break these down quickly. One name we'll come back to is a gentleman named Alex Hesselson, who he employed Bob Lesh to do some work for him at the same time Bob Lesh was employed by Clean Towel to do some work as well. So these two these two individuals coincide. Hesselson was deeply committed into this United Jewish Appeal, raising money for Israel bonds. Another individual in this Israel bonds group was Leon Brockman, who some assassination researchers may recognize. Marguerite Oswald testified that, or told the FBI that she was a nurse for Leon Brockman, and at a circumcision party for Brockman's grandson, she thinks she saw Jack Ruby at at the party. I should also mention that Marguerite Oswald also thought that there was a faction of Zionists behind the assassination. Another individual who's frequently mentioned in the Israel Bonds articles and a deeply committed Zionist in this milieu is Leon Gochman. Leon Gochman is in assassination lore as being the person who hosted uh, Michel Rowe, a Frenchman who they randomly met, that the Gochman family randomly met in Paris. He was like a hotel bellhop. And they said, sure, next time you want to come over to the US, come on by. So that's the official story. And evidently, this Michel Rowe took up the Gochmans and happened to arrive in Texas the weekend of the assassination. What's interesting is that Michel Rowe is the alias of the OAS assassin we mentioned earlier, John Swetra, alias Michael Mertz. We know from the CIA that Swetra, alias Roe, alias Mertz, was in Fort Worth in the morning and in Dallas on the afternoon of the 22nd, and that he was expelled from the country either to Canada or Mexico. And so I would conclude here that is the Israel bonds campaign, which actually still goes on today, was diverted through Fort Worth individuals that I've mentioned here to fund the nuclear reactor in Dimona that JFK was very adamant that would not have nuclear capabilities. Now, I also argue later that this was the same organization. If they weren't running guns, and that was if that was stopped early on for violating the U.S. Neutrality Act, then we probably would never have gotten as far as uranium being stolen from nuclear sites in the U.S. That ended up in Israel. Okay, so I just mentioned about gun running. That's the Haganah. That is the, well, you might want to call it the paramilitary group behind the formation of Israel. If anyone knows the Sonneborn group, that was the Institute. Institute is a small group of elite members of ardent Zionists and wealthy Jews in the United States right after the war were formed to funnel arms illegally to Israel before it was a state in order to arm itself for its war against the Palestinians. I mention all of this because Turrett's business partner in Los Angeles was a lawyer named Sid B. Levine. That's him down there speaking into that CBS microphone. We know he was involved because we have a document in which it stated that he had power of attorney for the Clean Towel Company in 1960. We know that Levine was one of the few members of the original Sonneborn group because of a 1973 oral history recording, which he tells the story of how he was working with well-known individuals like Hank Greenspun, uh, Al Schwimmer, who was convicted, and Sam Lewis in these operations. That again was the illegal gun running of weapons to a foreign power in their war to claim land in Israel. So, as I mentioned, and also Levine and Turrets had a business, had an oil business, we found out. So not quite sure how in depth that was, but that was interesting. You want me to keep going here, Paul?
Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Does anybody, I guess, would anybody have any questions about any of what I had mentioned so far before I veer off into another area?
Yeah, if
Okay.
anybody else wants to unmute, I can't see any questions in the chat so far.
Okay.
Um, but so
Great.
yeah, so just
Great.
keep going.
So I mentioned William Potter Gale. He was very close with Wesley Swift, who was a member of the Angelus Temple and Life Bible College. He was also one of the soldiers under General Willoughby. Now, Willoughby was part of the Chickasha Knights, which was the pseudo chivalric society that had a very paramilitary focus. Among these members in the Chickasha Knights, which they thought they were the offshoots of the Knights Hospitaller from the medieval times, but it was a fake organization, basically. You can read about it in one of my articles I did called Shaking Down Chick But anyway, members included General Willoughby, other generals within General MacArthur's Pacific staff. Again, William Potter Gale, as I mentioned, and I already mentioned his connection with Wesley Swift. There's another individual who was part of this milieu during the war under General MacArthur, and that his name was Scott Daly. We mention him, and so yeah, okay. So and Daly would have been part of the Chickasha Knights or under General Willoughby. Willoughby was, let me just say this, Willoughby was General MacArthur's counterintelligence right arm in the Pacific, both during the war and after the war.
He
So
also
why
called him
did we
my
mention?
little fascist, right?
Yeah,
Right.
that's right. And so MacArthur actually called Willoughby my little fascist. And he had a very far right, as you can see by his buddies here, very far right ideology. So why are we talking about this fellow called Scott Daly? Scott Daly.
Well,
You
yeah,
take over, Paul, please.
yeah, Scott Daly. This is the person that I came across a name. And in the 1960 Fort Worth directory, at this point in time in my research, I was finding very little names. And I got very frustrated. So one day, well, actually a few days, I decided to go line by line by line in the 1960 Fort Worth directory. And going through the alphabet through F, the only thing that came up was C, which was clean towel. And there was Mark Suffin listed as the general manager. But then I came to the S and I came across this person by the name of Eldorez Fablo. And he was listed at 3207 Ellis Avenue in Fort Worth. Now, when I proceeded, I got pretty excited about finally finding a name. This is the only place that Eldorez Fablo shows up. Even in the parentheses, as I'm going to show you here in a little bit, he has a spouse or a wife named Tony. But when I try to find any kind of research on him or a person, never showed up. Never showed up. Scott Daly owned this property in fall of 1962. And Daly was an attorney. He also owned a laundry facility. I think he owned he had one main facility where they did that, but I think he had a few stores, if I'm not mistaken. And he did rental properties. Between 1962 and 1963, he kind of starts showing up with Meacham Field. That's an airport that's nearby in Fort Worth. Today, it's more executive jets, but back then they were still trying to kind of make it an international airport for other carriers to come in. There's Fablo Alvarez with his wife Tony, an employee in Clean Towel at 3207 Ellis Avenue. And this is the document that shows that Scott Daly owns this property. And this is November 15th of 1962 on the unofficial copy. So there's no doubt about this in 1962 that Scott Daly owns this property. As a matter of fact, when it appears he retired in 1975, there was like 17 properties that he ended up selling in 1975, one of which was the Ellis Avenue address. He was nominated in June of 1963 to Meacham Field Aviation Board. This all started back in January of 1962, and as you can see there, the people that kept their airplanes and such saw that the rent hiked 50%. And so that kind of got the ire of a lot of the operators that were staying there. But things kind of shifted after a while. What it appeared that Daly was helping and representing the operators kind of shifted later on in 63. And as you can see here on what we've highlighted, one of the Meacham Field operators, Ed Ritchie, said Daly was not connected with the operators, no longer and represented them. Ritchie said Daly at one time tried to iron out the differences between the operators and the aviation board. And here it is. We got in 1963, June, Scott Daly is named to the board. And then July 5th of 1963, he is named vice president and takes over and takes oath for the board. Now I'm going to show you here at the beginning of the bottom, that's 3207 Ellis Avenue. And if you look at the Fort Worth Meacham Airport International, that's not a long distance. And it's quite close. As a matter of fact, I was in Fort Worth in 2023 and I rode by here and I was really, the map doesn't do it justice how actually close it is to Meacham now. It's very, very close. And you can see on top here, biking distance, walking distance. It's definitely something that kind of caught my eye in terms of the walk even to get to there. So kind of interesting that aspect. Okay, we're going to jump now to 1962 and 1963. And this is when I first started, I came across some documents, the incorporators. I came across the Sid Levine being an attorney, power of attorney for turrets. And the reason why Sid Levine was an attorney for turrets is because they had a fire in 1960. And so Levine ended up representing him on the insurance claim. Here's a name that's familiar. We said earlier, we have an Alex Hesselson document with Lesh at 3628 South Jones. I feel that this is also a first time encounter between these two is back in March of 1962. So even though we're going to show some documents here in 1963, I believe we have evidence that shows that these guys probably had an earlier meeting going back in 1962. That includes Lesh, who moves back into the Fort Worth area and purchased a home in September of 1962. What's interesting about that purchase too that Lesh has is it's kind of front loaded. He has very low payments in September, starting in September, but in February of 63, they jump up. So that's kind of interesting in terms of seeing the differences of what he was going to pay in the contract starting versus going on later on. Also, I'm going to show you here, Lesh had a power of attorney in June of 1963, which he named his father, not his wife, because he was married at that time. And then finally, in August of 1963, even though it looks like it's spelling out that Lesh is going to buy this property, he ends up leaving this house and it goes for sale and ends up starting businesses in Phoenix, Arizona. This is the document. This is a document that, quite frankly, blew me away. And the reason why it blew me away is because when I found out this document, and as you can see there, it says Bob Lesh, Robert Lesh with Clean Towel, I was like, oh my gosh, finally an employee I can research and look into. Well, when I started looking into Bob Lesh, and if you read our articles, you find out his background. And so when I saw this document, I was so taken back by it, I actually called the Tarrant County Records Office. And I was on the phone with them with this document, and I said, let me know if I'm understanding this correctly, that this document's indicating that Bob Lesh is working for Clean Towel. Do I have that correct? And of course they say, well, we're not attorneys. We don't. And I said, no, I'm trying to figure out if he is what I'm seeing here, that he's a representative of Clean Towel. And they said, yes, you are correct. And well, I always like second confirmations. So when I was in Fort Worth in 2023, I went in the records need office, had the same document, and I said, I know you're not an attorney, but please let me know if I'm understanding this correctly. This document is indicating that Robert Lesh is working for Clean Towel. And they said, yes. So that kind of got the whole ball rolling in terms of Bob Lesh and his background. And as you can see here, this is South Jones Street. This is an area that Robert Lesh, if you look to the left here, Robert Lesh and Alex Hesselson are together on this document. And the document has Robert Lesh doing supposedly construction work on this house at 3628 South Jones Street. Now, the question I'd have to ask everybody is, how in the heck would Robert Lesh and Alex Hesselson meet? Robert Lesh wasn't working for any construction company back in 1962 or 63. So it's kind of quizzical how these guys would get together in terms of possibly working construction on this house or maybe some other areas that they're doing in the house. So the document you're looking at there on the left is Alex Hesselson and Robert Lesh being together. So we're going to fall back to 1962, March 9th, and came across a document. So if you remember this document, we put it in here for a reason. And Robert Lesh bought a Pontiac in March 9th of 1962. Okay. What's interesting about that was, and we didn't show it at the time, this was in Barzaros County. I'm probably butchering the name on that, so forgive me. But you can see there, Robert A. Lesh, Box 119, College Station. He bought a Pontiac. But what's also listed with that, and I'm going to get into this soon, is you're going to see a company called the International Shoe Company, and that person bought a Chevrolet station wagon. You can see it there. That's probably 1, 2, 3 items above where Lesh is, if those of you that kind of want to look it on the vital statistics. Now, here's what I try to do. I actually contacted the state of Texas and I said, listen, I'm trying to find out what kind of vehicle, besides a Pontiac, what's the model? And I asked them, is there any kind of way, I've got the date, I've got the person, is living in College Station, is there any way I can get a listing of cars purchased back then? And they said, only if you have a VIN ID. And of course, there's no VIN ID here. So I did try to take the extra step to see what kind of model or what this Pontiac would be. Kind of going back here to Lesh in 1962, this is actually in a Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and you can see there they're announcing that Robert Lesh bought a 3-bedroom air-conditioned home at 1908 Dakar in Ridgemar edition from Leo Barrett. Again, this is Fort Worth. When I showed a picture to Bobby Lesh, because Bob was in construction, I had that conversation with Bobby, and I said, listen, obviously, we know about his background in terms of when he died, surveillance equipment, bugging equipment. But I said to her, he was legit, right? He did the construction. She goes, oh yeah, he was legit. And as a matter of fact, when I showed her the picture of this house, she said that would be kind of the house that Bob would want to live in. Kind of interesting, in 1963, kind of go back a little bit. In 1956, Bob is shot. 1961, his car is dynamited. Then in 1963, he's asking for power of attorney for his father, not his wife, but his father. And it's my belief that I think that Bob, and when this power of attorney was done, I think Bob knew what he was getting into. I think personally, I think this documentation that Bob did through Tarrant County Records and Search, I think he's kind of leaving a trail in my eyes. And I think he knew he was getting something dangerous. What it was, we don't know, or he probably didn't know at that time. It's one of those, you don't ask questions. You just don't ask questions. You do your job. Now we're going to jump into Alex Hesselson. Who is Alex Hesselson? Well, as James talked to him about his background in regards to Israel, he was the treasurer for Fort Worth for the raising of bonds for Israel. He was employed by the Fair Department Stores in downtown Fort Worth for over 30 years. The Fair Department Stores in Texas were kind of like a regional chain of stores. I think they had places like in Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, and Fort Worth was some of the places. He held various titles, including buyer, manager of shoe department, and department manager. In the 1940s, he was president of the Southwest Shoeman Organization of Texas. This is where these guys would get together and kind of have their own organization in terms of holding conventions, bringing out the latest shoe styles. So he was president of that. He also resided throughout his whole life in the posh Elks Club and Hilton Hotel in Fort Worth. Never lived in a house, never lived in an apartment. He lived in the Elks Club and a Hilton Hotel. Travels for Alex Hesselson in January of 1954. He took a 16-day cruise in the Caribbean. And in August of 1954, he sailed to Israel for 9 weeks. Now, I'm kind of saying this tongue-in-cheek, but kind of seriously at the same time. What kind of an employer allows their employee to take that much time off in 1954 with the kind of job that he had? Kind of interesting in that kind of aspect. Maybe with all his years working at the Fair Department Stores, he'd build up vacation time. I don't know. 1961, the Fair Stores Department of Fort Worth and Dallas become subsidiaries of Allied Stores Corporation of New York. So basically, they kind of bought them. In August of I think it was 61, there was an offering by Allied Stores that I found for $27 million. They're doing a bond offering, and I feel that bond offering of $27 million was part of the purchase of buying the Fair department stores in Texas. Now, the merger of these stores may have left him unemployed for a brief period of time. He's at this time, Hesselson is 66 years of age. So, given the time period, maybe there's an idea here that says, hey, you served your purpose here, 66-year-old guy, maybe it's time for you to go. No record of Hesselson in the Fort Worth City Directory from 1961 to 1963. He's listed, there are some years where he's not listed, but it's curious that from 1961 to 1963, he's not listed. But he's likely still living in the city of Fort Worth. Now, where is he working during this time? In late fall 1961 or early 1962, he may obtain employment with the International Shoe Company based in St. Louis, Missouri. Now, J.P. Boyd, obituary, 9th, 1961, International Shoes Company representative. Now, the International Shoe Company was a pretty big, large store. They had a large company, excuse me. They had the included well-known Florsheim shoes. I'm sure we all know that name, at least here in the States we do. And what's interesting in regards to going back to the J.P. Boyd, he was a sales representative in the Fort Worth, Dallas area for 39 years. This is his obituary with the International Shoe Company. Now, I've been in sales, well, I'm retired now, but I was in sales for over 30 years of my life. And my thinking here is that if someone in a position like J.P. Boyd were to pass away, they're not going to give his accounts or business to anybody, especially back then. I mean, the shoe business was a pretty big business back in the 50s and 60s, and even probably the 40s. So my theory here is that Hesselson, given his experience and know-how with the shoeman organization throughout Texas, was probably hired by International Shoe Company because of his experience. Remember, I'm kind of saying that he, through the merger, had left the Fair department stores because of the merger, and possibly late 61 or early 62, he becomes employed through International Shoe. In 1959, International Shoe added 57 retail stores, including Paul Shoes, which are in Dallas. And here's a name we're going to start off with, Robert O. Monig. He was listed as the board of managers for Florsheim and director for the Savage Shoes Limited in 1961. Monig's obituary listed him formerly vice president and treasurer for the International Shoe Company in St. Louis. That name is going to be very important, Monig, when we go ahead here. The International Shoe Company had a manufacturing and supply plants in Byron, Texas. Byron, Texas is about 170 miles southeast of Fort Worth. And again, we have Robert O. Monig listed as vice president and treasurer. In 1963, Monig buys 4 of the Fair stores in the Fort Worth area. So when the Fair department stores gets bought out by Allied, they are now starting to kind of wean some of the stores, maybe for some that are underperforming or just might not fit the model anymore, what they're trying to do. So Monings buys 4 of the stores in the Fort Worth area. Here comes the name. Otto W. Monig was president, family-owned business, was president of Monings. And Otto and Robert Monig, Shoe International, were second cousins, same great-grandfather. And you can see here the 2 shoe executives named by Monings. There is Alex Hesselson. Kind of looks like Albert, it looks like Hitchcock a little bit. He's the guy on the left. But that's Alex Hesselson, and this is July 5th of 1963. He now goes over, in my eyes, goes from possibly Shoe International, now coming over into Monings there in downtown Fort Worth. It's probably a case where, given his experience, Hesselson is maybe a consultant. They list him as being a former operator of the shoe departments, and he'll handle the shoe departments. But what's interesting is later on in 1964, they announce all these departments within the shoe departments of all these promotions, but Alex Hesselson is never mentioned on in these newspaper clippings. This is the document from 3628 South Jones Street, October of 63. This is where Alex Hesselson is getting paid $1,800 from the people that live here. For what reasons? Not sure about that, but he did get his money. So this is the connection of Lesh going back to May and Hesselson. Now Hesselson has this, and now he's getting paid. All right. So any questions as we go along here about what we found or?
There is actually one question, Paul, from Nancy. Just going back to Meacham Field, she just asked, did you ever find anything from Meacham Field involving Air America?
Well, this is going to be uncorroborated, so consider the source, okay?
Mhm.
So a while back, I was in the I was looking through some message boards of Fort Worth. I was trying to understand the history and stuff like that of Fort Worth, and they had a specific area there about Meacham Field, and someone, again, consider the source, we're on the internet here in terms of message boards, said that they knew someone that was from Vietnam. He was a captain or something to that effect, who was doing his training in the late 60s at Meacham Airfield. So I'm going to give that a yes, kind of, but I kind of thought that was kind of telling in terms of what I had found so far and what we've seen from Meacham.
I'll jump in, Tony.
Go ahead, James.
I do believe there is a Fort Worth connection. And if we have time, I'll circle back to that because it needs to be corroborated. But the Flying Tigers, which Nancy would know, seems to have a Fort Worth connection, and therefore I would argue has a Meacham Field connection. But I'll get back to you.
Thanks, James. Great. Well, Nancy finds that answer very interesting, Paul. Thanks, thanks, Paul and James. And like I said, if anybody else has got a question, please feel free to unmute yourself. Otherwise, we can.
Are we good on time, Tony?
Yes, we're very good on time. Yeah, we're 10
Because
to
I was
4.
expecting this could be the break time, but I think we're going at a pretty good clip.
Yeah, we can go a bit further if you want. I mean, we'll have a look again in about 10 or 15 minutes. How does that sound, Paul?
That sounds good. All right, so here's a guy that it's funny how when you start doing research and you kind of focus on a guy, doesn't it seem like other people are doing the same thing? And so I've been looking at Lee Bowers here for quite a while now, based upon his testimony. And it seems like now I'm starting to see more people talking about Lee Bowers recently. But anyway, talking about Lee Bowers here, we're going to look into the description of cars driving around the parking lot, which he described as having Goldwater bumper sticker in a scenic location. I'm going to kind of get into the 1961 to 63 Arizona white license plate that he talked about. And here's one I think people, Bowers is very descriptive when he talks to the Warren Commission. But the one thing I found out when reading his, and it's always stuck in the back of my mind, is when he says, and through his testimony, was, "I was busy." And he was busy that day. He was probably the first guy that you would consider multitasking, doing the railroads. And by the way, why weren't the railroads shut down knowing that JFK was coming through? You would think that they wouldn't have any movement or anything like that with the trains, with the president going to be approaching there pretty soon. And finally, we're going to go back to the last 1962 Pontiac. Okay, Tony, you ready to go here?
I'm ready to go, Paul.
Thespian? Okay, I'll be Mr. Ball and you be Mr. Bowers.
Okay.
Here we go. Mr. Ball, close to noon, did you make any observation of the area around between your tower and Elm Street?
Yes, because of the fact that the area had been covered by the police for some 2 hours. Since approximately 10 o'clock in the morning, traffic had been cut off in the area so that anyone moving around could actually be observed. Since I had worked there for a number of years, I was familiar with most of the people who came in and out of the area.
Did you notice any cars around there?
Yes, there were three cars that came in during the time from around noon until the time of the shooting.
Came in where?
They came into the vicinity of the tower, which was at the extension of Elm Street, which runs in front of the school depository, and which there is no way out. It's not through a street to anywhere.
There's a parking area behind the school depository between that building and your tower?
Two or three railroad tracks and a small amount of parking area for employees.
And the first came along that you noticed about what time of day?
I do not recall the exact time, but I believe it was approximately 12:10. Wouldn't be too far off.
And the car you noticed, when you noticed the car, where was it?
The car proceeded in front of the school depository down across 2 to 3 tracks and circled the area in front of the tower and to the west of the tower, and it was searching for a way out or was checking the area and then proceeded back through the only way he could, the same outlet he came into.
The place where Elm dead ends?
That's right. Back in front of the school depository was the only way he could get out, and I lost sight of him. I couldn't watch him.
What was the description of that car?
The first car was a 1959 Oldsmobile, blue and white station wagon with out-of-state license.
Do you know what state?
No, I do not. I would know it. I could identify it, I think, if I looked at a list.
Kind of interesting, folks. Did they provide Bowers a list? No. And it had something else, some bumper stickers?
Had a bumper sticker, one of which was a Goldwater sticker, and the other of which was some scenic location, I think.
And did you see another car?
Yes, some 15 minutes or so after this, at approximately 12 o'clock, 20 to 12, I guess, 12:20 would be close to it. A little time differential there. But there was another car, which was a 1957 black Ford, with one male in it that seemed to have a mic or telephone or something that gave appearance at least of that.
How could you tell that?
He was holding something up to his mouth with one hand, and he was driving with the other, and he gave the appearance. He was very close to the tower. I could see him as he proceeded around the area.
What kind of license did that have?
Had a Texas license.
What did it do as it came into the area? From what street?
It came in from the extension of Elm Street in front of the school depository.
Did you see it leave?
Yes, after 3 or 4 minutes, cruising around the area, it departed the same way. He did a probe a little further into the area than the first car.
Did you see another car?
Third car, which entered the area, which was some 7 or 9 minutes before the shooting. I believe it was a 1961 or 1962 Chevrolet four-door Impala, white, showed signs of being on the road. It was muddy up to the window, bore a similar out-of-state license to the first car I observed, occupied also by one white male.
What did it do?
He spent a little more time in the area. He circled the area and probed once past the tower in an attempt to get and was forced to back out some considerable distance and slowly cruised down back towards the front of the old school depository building.
Then did he leave?
The last I saw of him, he was pausing just above the assassination site.
Did the car park or continue on, or did you notice?
Whether it continued on at that very moment or whether it pulled up only a short distance, I couldn't tell. I was busy.
I was busy. How long was this before the president's car passed there?
This last car, about 8 minutes.
So, thank you, Tony. Round of applause. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Looking at Bowers on his affidavit, and this is where I want to key in one area in terms of Bowers, and this is the affidavit from 11/22 of 1963, and we've got it highlighted. This car had out-of-state license plates with a white background and black numbers, no letters. 1961 to 1963, this is the Arizona license plate and what it looked like. And I'm going to presume this was a license plate, if it wasn't full of mud, uh, that Lee Bauer saw. As a matter of fact, now I'm going to jump into Bob Lesh and his Pontiac. And so what I decided to do was I asked AI in 1962, Pontiac, remember, Bob bought a Pontiac in 1962 down in, well, he's living in College Station, Bryan, Texas area. Pontiac offered two cars that were similar in size and shared the same General Motors B-body platform as the Chevrolet Impala, the Catalina, and new for the 1962 Grand Prix. One of the things that Bobby Lesh always talked about in our meetings or phone conversations was Bob always had to be the most stylistic. He had to have stylistic clothes, silk shirts, silk underwear, alligator shoes, dressed to the hilt. So the Catalina, if you know anything about the Catalina, it is a little bit more of a sporty car than the Chevrolet Impala. Now we're going to move to the Dallas County Courthouse. So in 1958, there's a gentleman by the name of Harold Sidney Wickham, and he was named county purchasing agent. As a matter of fact, in 1963, Polk's Greater Dallas City Directory listed him as a county purchasing agent. Now, I'll go back to this in a little bit, but now I want to get into the Clean Towel Fire of 1966 and why it's even relevant in terms of 1963. And that is, in 1966, Clean Towel had this massive fire, basically burned it down almost to the ground. I did ask our hometown laundry owner here, because it seemed like Sutphin, there were a lot of fires when he was managing the business, so to speak. And I asked him about that, thinking there was something nefarious. And he said, no, that was pretty common back in those days, that the laundry facilities and those mats had fires. And he even said to me back in 2003, they had a fire here in our hometown, which I totally forgot about. But some oil rags caught fire and burnt it to the ground. So, you know, when you're kind of doing the research under laundromats and you see all these fires, you're like, what are they doing? They trying to, you know, collect some insurance money or something? But he indicated to me that was one of the hazards of being in the laundry business. Now, how I came across this fire in 1966, I finally came across a different name. Even though it was 1966, Mark Sutphin was listed as the general manager in the article, but then they had a gentleman by the name of Norman Harris, plant manager. And I went, wow, finally a name. Well, it's 66, so I'll look into this. And in Ancestry, it turns out his son was a member of Ancestry. Now, his son, his name's Butch Roberts. He had gone through identity theft twice. So for me to try to call him, he was not keen on it. So we did nothing but email correspondence. And Butch, if you're listening right now, give me a call. We got to talk, man. So anyway, back in 1966, he proceeds to tell me that, oh, by the way, in 1967 and in 1968, I was a driver for Clean Towel, and I had the Dallas route. And of course, I was like, oh, well, I've been okay. Let's talk about that. So one of the things he talked to me about was the hazards of the job. He specifically talked about the truck itself, that the truck in Texas heat was miserable because he said that they had a lot of restaurants, they had a lot of grease and smelly stuff. So he was also saying that at top speed, that truck could only go 45 miles per hour. So that was kind of interesting to hear his take on it. What he also said to me was that, excuse me, I don't know why my battery's saying it's low here, so I'm going to have to find a place here. Excuse me on that. I was not expecting that.
No problem.
But what he also told me was when he was a driver, that the only account that they had in downtown Dallas was the Dallas County Courthouse. And we'll get into that a little bit here. Oh, sorry. So this is a second confirmation. I had talked to Butch about this earlier, but when I was asking him about what building he wasn't too sure. You know, memory, he's a little older these days, well, a little older, he's in his 80s or early 80s. And so, as you can see here, he indicates to me that that's it. This is the building that he serviced when he was a clean towel driver in 1967 and 68. It was at that time, he said, it was the only account that had in downtown Dallas. Now, this is the Dallas County Courthouse looking from Elm Street, and you can see there it's a really nice feature here in terms of the proximity and the eye shot that you can see in terms of overlooking Dealey Plaza. And so let's do this. Let's take a break here if we could, because I want to.
Oh, that's fine. I think it's probably is a good time to take a break. I think we just lost him. Okay. So
Okay.
listen, should we take about 10 minutes? Does that sound okay to everybody? Yeah. So it's now 6 minutes past 4, and we'll come back then at about that's it. Well, let's make it 20 past 4. Come back, yeah.
Thanks, Tony.
Have a break.
Thanks,
No
Tony.
problem. Thanks, James. I'll get ready for my next set of lines. Does this mean I can go from my what do they call that card that actors have? I don't know.
Equity.
Equity. Can I go for my equity card? I have now performed in public. That was fun. How you doing, Richard?
Yeah, I'm fine, thanks. And thanks very much for stepping in into the breach.
That's fine. Yeah,
That's,
that's fine. I got a message from Neil. Yeah, he's still trying to drive himself out of Germany.
dear me. Poor lad.
Poor lad is right. Yeah, you know, expensive trip for him, I'd say. Do you know?
Yeah, very much so. Right.
Anyway,
I shall pay
okay.
a call of nature. Speak
Do
soon.
go for it. I'm going to put the kettle on. See you in a minute.
Cheers. Bye now.
Of the book
Sorry, Pete. Go ahead.
Final Judgment. And now it's a long time since I've read that book, but think it mentions that Yitzhak Rabin was in Dealey
We're getting there.
Plaza or in Dallas that day.
That's right.
Have you come across any of that? Can you confirm or?
You know, I always hesitate to say I can confirm that, because I wasn't there, as you know, but there's corroborating evidence that he was.
Right.
Ooh.
Okay, that'll do.
We're going to
Yeah.
get into this, but you're steps ahead of us.
Right, okay. No problem. I will mute again and on you go.
Good question. Just before we begin, welcome back from the break. Does anybody else have any other questions before we jump into the second part? That's fine if not. Okay. So, Paul, do you want to just continue? And
Yes,
you've got the
thank you.
queued up.
All right, sorry about that, folks. Little incident last night preluded me to losing some power here on my computer, but hopefully everything's up to go. So before I start here, this is going to be a jump here for some people. And if you're not familiar with remote viewing, maybe after tonight or this presentation, you can Google remote viewing. I don't want to get too much into it in regards to the background and stuff like that, but it's pretty interesting to me in terms of remote viewing. So, Tony, do you want me to start this video?
Yep, go for it, Paul.
Okay, so I'm going to let this gentleman is by the name of Dick Algar, and he does a blind remote viewing of the JFK assassination. So I'm going to skip through some parts here because you can see here it's an hour, almost an hour and 10 minutes. And if you look at the right side, play a little bit longer in some cases, but these split times, he's gonna talk about the blind remote viewing.
In August of 2015, I worked a blind remote viewing target. I was only told this is Project 14. That's all the information I was given, Project 14. It could have been anywhere, anytime, any place. It could have been in the distant past, it could have been in the near past, it could have been in the future, it could have been in the present. It could have been on Mars, it could have been on the moon, it could have been on the bottom of the ocean, or it could have been in a sealed vault. I didn't know. I was only told Project 14. Here's a recording, unedited, of my full remote viewing session on what turned out to be the JFK assassination. I awoke on target to find myself in a park that was Dealey Plaza. So I was there. I didn't know that's where it was. And my attention was drawn to a building which was not the Texas School Book Depository. I was drawn to another building nearby, which was the Dallas Courthouse, which you'll see me describe here. I didn't witness the shooting itself. I heard it, and I saw the reactions. So here is my full unedited session done under blind protocol of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. This was recorded almost 10 years ago. This time it's a building, a big, imposing, impressive looking building, and I'll draw it for you. This is a building I see almost every time I look at this target. This becomes my anchor point at the target. So I can always find the building and then spread my awareness out and see other things. So let me draw this building. Almost like a castle in a certain way. Not a castle. And by the way, I see these spires, towers, what do you call these? Gabled? Maybe a big one right here. But this thing is like red rock, a brownish red, okay? And it looks like it be at, not Disneyland, but the term I use, I keep referring to this as the Gothic building. Because I can't spell when I'm remote viewing. The Gothic building, okay? This is the Gothic place. Big, imposing. It looks like it belongs, like European in the 1800s, the mid or early 19th century. So my sense of this is the 1800s, just because that's what it looks like. It looks like a big old building, turrets. Is that what I want to say? Turrets, spires. A couple of these, a bunch of these, big in the middle. Very imposing building, solid, fortress-like. And my sense of this is European, but we'll get back to that. But this is, aside from the park that I was in, this is the most significant visual thing that I see on target. This is my foothold. So we'll go back to this. Red spires. You know, it's big, it's imposing, it's Gothic, it's almost kind of spooky looking, like it should be in somewhere in Europe. Okay, so we'll get back to this. Here. It's brown, reddish brown. and it has turrets. I drew this before. I'm going to draw it again. And let me explain. There's a high point on it. There's like, this is the big imposing building. There's a reason I'm drawing this. When you remote view, stuff catches up to you. I've been working this session for a while now, and stuff's building up in me. Okay, there's that building, there's a road, there's a car, there's a couple cars, even motorcycles. You know, I smelled horses too. I thought, swear to God, there's a horse somewhere here. But a lot of people here. There's a smaller building here, other buildings here. The road comes this way. People are out here. So here's why I'm back to the Gothic building. Why I was so drawn to this building, because it's visually very distinct. When I close my eyes and get a flash of the scene, I always see this, but something's pulling me to that. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is what I think, is that there is people up here, because it's the highest point in this area. This is command and control. This is the ultimate, there's spotters up here. And I get a sense of radio communication. They've got some gear, pretty big. It's like, today I could do it, you know, it'd be like an iPhone, but back in this day, I think it's about this big, a big bulky thing that I think has the scrambled radio communications. It's a scrambler, so nobody can listen in. And this is, for its time, incredibly high tech. This is, nobody would even know about this. This would be like big, I don't know radio stuff. That's somebody I could ask. I will later. But this is up here. They've got the high point. They can watch. They see the car coming. They're in control of everybody. They've got they're like giving the orders. Okay, those teams I drew, I think there might be one here or one on this building on the high up, another one on the high up here in the, like on the rooftop, and the stockyard team, the fence. And I think that's command and control. I think there were some guys with rifles here, and I think they didn't shoot. I don't think they took a shot, but they were there. It was loaded. I think these guys did, and these guys did. And I think it triangulated in, and I think it was an assassination. And I'd have to say it was the assassination of John F. Kennedy in Dallas. I'm blind to this target. I've been told this is target 14A. I've done some paperwork. I've had no comment on my work other than to continue. So I may be just talking out of my ass here. These guys, who and why, like the shooters, they're cold, they're professional, they're contract guys. They've done this kind of thing before. Nothing this big, nothing this important. The sheep dipped. They've been sheep dipped. Sheep dip, that's a term. If you take somebody in the military and make them a civilian so they're not tied to the military and have them do something secret. I think these guys are not military, but they're maybe some of them, but not too much military. They've more been like sheep dipped out of the CIA, like they worked for something like the CIA, like maybe there's something I don't know about that's similar to the CIA, very secret, and they've been sheep dipped from that. They're confident enough, somebody's got enough juice, whoever hired them, they trust that they can get away with this, that they're not going to left to be hung out. There's a camaraderie, that's a bad word. Camaraderie has a good connotation. This is like their cells that are, you know, specifically they're insulated. They're just in a world that is, they run in their own circles. They run in circles that they know that they can get away with this. So there's a trust of higher-ups. Like I said, juice. Somebody's got enough juice that so if, I mean, there's enough juice behind this that this was a, do I spell it right? A coup d'etat. So it came from high enough levels. That's what I was getting at, is that they're working for people at high enough levels. Some rogue guys aren't just going to go shoot the president and think they can get away with it. They know that this can be handled at the highest levels, that no press is going to question them, no FBI is going to question them, no, there will be no investigation will go anywhere. That level of confidence to pull a trigger, that much coldness, that they work for someone that's, oh God, above the president.
Okay, so I think that's a pretty good place to stop that. Um, any questions on that, on remote viewing?
Let's see. I think Nancy's put a question in the chat. I guess she's asking the question by 2015. How much did he know about the JFK assassination?
Yeah, that I can't answer. What I found interesting in the whole presentation was the Gothic building. Clean Towel had an account there in 1963 in all likelihood. So the Gothic building, which the driver has indicated they had a count there, and he went in there and uh, serviced that building. So I think it's pretty relevant in terms of the remote viewing and finding out that Clean Towel had that business account in 1963.
There's just a follow-up question. It's just like, how did you find this video, this person, and what is his? Do we know what his background is?
I don't. I actually got it from the Lone Gunman. I'm gonna go back a little bit here. The Lone Gunman podcast. When I had talked to Butch Roberts in 2022, he had mentioned this building, and when I listened to this on the Lone Gunman podcast on this program, I got chills in the back of my neck because I know that Butch had just told me that he had serviced this building. So I thought that was pretty telling in terms of what Butch told me, and then finding out through this remote that this was the command center.
Yeah.
Okay, now where did the truck go? Now, shootings occurred, and it sounds pretty easy. I thought right away, like, well, we don't see the truck going. There's a famous photo of a truck that was behind the Clean Towel truck that came down Elm Street. I wish I had the photo. I couldn't find it. That was coming down Elm Street, and the time had it at 12:39. So what I'm trying to do next is to kind of give you an idea of where the Clean Towel truck and how it got, or how it left, so to speak. In this case, how it took a right. So Tony, again, if you could do Mr. Romack and I, these are bits of what he said in the Warren Commission testimony. So Tony, you ready?
I'm ready to go. Do you want me to
Okay, you're
start?
James Romack. Here we go. So go ahead,
Okay.
you start.
So I'm going to say the back part.
Could you see that back door in the back part?
Well, I mean, they got it sealed off. I could see as much as anyone could see.
Could you see there are some stairs that go up to the back dock, aren't there?
Right here.
You're pointing to the first floor plan of the school book depository.
Yes.
Did you watch those stairs?
Yes, sir.
How long did you watch them after you saw the policeman leave?
Well, I watched them all the time until someone arrived. And the only time I did take my back off, turn my back to the building, was Sam Pate with his K-Box News. He arrived before any of the police or anyone.
Is that K-Box?
Yes,
Is that a radio or television station?
it's a radio station.
How long did you take your eyes off them?
He was driving up and they were having a little high. The city has a piece of wood that they use to stop traffic coming through, and I'd taken that so he could come through, drive his truck.
Okay. Drive his truck. So what Romack is describing here is after the shooting, he was back behind the school book depository, and the street we're talking about is Houston. Houston was going under some construction, but clearly it was passable by vehicles. Now, the next shot I'm going to show you is this. This is the K box. This is from 1965. This is the mobile unit. So this is what Romack is talking about here in terms of the vehicle. So it is a red station wagon. So what I'm trying to point out here is the K box that came through was a red station wagon. It wasn't a truck. So my contention here is that Romac let the truck go through and allowed the K box to come through, the news radio station. Who is Sam Pate? I'm not going to get too much into this because of time here, but needless to say, Sam Pate was working for K-Box as a reporter. He was located at the entrance of the Trade Mart, waiting for Kennedy. K-Box had the mobile coverage. I believe there was two K-Box station wagons or reporters that were following the motorcade. But Sam Pate was waiting at the entrance of the Trade Mart. Now, when he heard of the shooting, he estimated that within approximately 4 minutes after he heard of the shooting, he was at the rear of the school book depository. Folks, I'll grant you this, he's a reporter, he might be flying, trying to get back to the school book depository. But 4 minutes? I don't think so. What I'm trying to do here is to say that I don't believe it was 4 minutes. I believe it was anywhere from probably 6 to 8 minutes. Why to 6 to 8 minutes? Because if Hughes is leaving the Gothic building, it takes anywhere from about 5 to 7 minutes to walk from the Gothic building or the Dallas County Record buildings to the corner of Elm and Houston. So this idea, and I believe, if I remember correctly, the distance is either 1.6 miles or 2.6 miles. I apologize for that at the top of my head. I don't recall. But either way, the time frame of going to the Trade Mart and taking the back roads, I don't think it took 4 minutes. I think it took a little bit more time. Some final thoughts now. I believe Robert Lesh is the last car described by Bowers. He misidentified it. He said dark numbers. I think he meant blue numbers. And the Chevrolet Impala, I believe that's Lesh's Pontiac 1962, probably a Catalina that was driving there. Now, another key detail on this was Robert Lesh lived out in the boonies in 1963. I talked to his daughter, and she said that Bob always felt more comfortable living in mobile homes. And I know that in 1966, 65, 67, he had a mobile home in First, Texas. And in 1956, when he moved, or 1955, when he moved down to Fort Worth, Hearst area, and there's a picture that Bobby has shared with me, he was living in a trailer home. So living out the boonies, living out there, I think coming into Dealey Plaza, he got the muddy car. And that's the last car that I believe. And it's Pontiac was purchased along with Hesselson in 1962. I believe that's the vehicle that Lee Bowers is describing. Lesh wouldn't be driving the black Ford described by Bowers on the Mike Carr phone. I believe he was in charge of communications that day. I think he had the overall skill, knowledge to do something like this. Again, I'm going to go back to when he was murdered, and they had some audio tapes that had on Lesh when he was blackmailing some of the people that he was trying to perfect the perfect bugging technique. So that's where I have Robert Lesh. I have him where Lee Bowers is describing him. James?
I think James had to jump off.
Oh,
Sorry. He's just said, Paul will finish. I have to step away.
okay. Well, that was going to be another thing that James is going to talk about. So maybe later on, somehow he can kind of summarize that. Bobby Lesh told me in 1964, she attended a Goldwater fundraiser with Bob. And I asked her, because at the time she was about 8 years old, and I said, Bobby, how do you remember something like that? What brought it out? She said, I had this dress I was all ready, excited to go to this event, and it turned out that the dress was pricking me and I didn't like it anymore and I wanted to go. So she remembers attending a Barry Goldwater fundraiser in Phoenix in 1964. And I believe it was held, I found out in June of 64, there was a Phoenix Center Goldwater fundraiser, and they were expecting about 8,000 people, but only 2,000 people showed up. So there's another one in terms of the Goldwater bumper sticker or the Goldwater influence, so to speak, that Bowers described back in the railroad yards. And we've come to the conclusion that 3207 Ellis Avenue and 3628 South Jones Street, again, reminder 3207 Ellis Avenue is the one that's near Meacham Airport, and that's the house that Scott Daly owned. The 3628 South Jones is where Alex Hessel's come in. And it's our opinion that we believe Alex Hesselson was getting that house ready for a very important person. And we're speculating that it could be Rabin, given the ties that Hesselson has. You know, if you all remember, I think Larry Hancock said this, that prior to the assassination, they had a lot of ambulance runs going down to Dealey Plaza. What could be more perfect than perfecting the clean towel truck, because it's going to do its normal course of every day, that they could practice the routes because they're going in Dealey Plaza every day. So I think that's pretty important in regards to getting ready for November 22nd, 1963. The walking time of being in or near Dallas County Courthouse, Gothic Building, takes about 5 to 7 minutes to the corner of Elm and Houston. Truck took a right turn on Houston instead of straight of Elm and exiting Fort Worth Freeway. You know, you got that straight shot in the sign there on Elm Street. After you pass the school book depository, it says Fort Worth. Butch Roberts told me that all those bags on top were someone that was just about done with the end of the day. He was like, "What time of day was Kennedy shot at?" And I said, "Well, he says, around 12. He says, "That's a lot of bags for that time of day. A lot of bags." Although the bags on top provide cover, the laundry truck is not a place of where a shooter was located, and that's not laboratory. I think it's either John or Jerry or did a scientific study, and I think there's even litigation going on between those two, but they indicated where they thought some of the shots came from in the scientific survey, and none of them came from the top of the laundry truck. And that's it.
Great. Thanks a lot, Paul. So people are muted, so you can't hear the applause, but people are applauding.
Oh, thank you.
I think
That goes for James as well.
Yeah, I mean, please, Paul, pass our thanks on to James. It was great that you both came to address us today and this now, and you've done it in such good time as well. So it gives us plenty of time to continue the discussion, raise any questions that we actually have. I'm not sure whether you want to stop sharing your screen, Paul.
Okay.
I know that just while you're doing that, Nancy put, sorry, unless Brooks, have you got a question? I see it's just unmuted. So go ahead, Brooks.
Just a couple comments. Yeah, I don't know the purpose of all the bags on top of the laundry truck and what it may have been hiding. It is an interesting comment that there's a lot of bags there by noon on a Friday. If it was coming down Elm and servicing businesses along the way, it's conceivable. Every run is different. In my research, something that kind of came up, and I may have presented this, I think, when I was talking about 605 Elsbeth, because on the day of the assassination, the Dallas police put a report together early in the afternoon, and they listed Oswald as Harvey Lee Oswald, not Lee Harvey, but Harvey Lee Oswald, living at 605 Elsbeth. I think most of you are aware of that. So in my research of 605 Elsbeth, that house was owned since the end of World War II by a couple that had one daughter. And she married a man by the name of Vincent Scotch. And Vincent Scotch was a route salesman driver for Acme Towel for 18 years, from the end of World War II up to 1963. And he died on November 2nd, 20 days before the assassination, in a VA hospital up in McKinney, which I thought was a bit mysterious. It turns out that Acme Towel is owned by the Zelazny family, and they had been in business in Dallas for decades. So you would figure they would have a strong toehold on a lot of businesses, having been there for as long as they were. And so it always raised the question to me, and this is the time when linen towels were in a dispenser that you would pull and then they would roll back up, and so they had to have those in the second floor bathrooms of the Texas School Book Depository. They had to have them throughout the bathrooms in the Daltex building. So my thought was always, who serviced those different buildings in the Dealey Plaza area? And what role did Acme Towel have in it potentially? Now, the Zelazny's were Jewish. They were from Poland, and their family, their town was 15 miles from the Rubenstein family's home in that area of Poland. So there's a connection there. I don't think they went, in an earlier bit of my research, I thought that the Zelazny's and Jack Ruby went to the same synagogue. I don't believe that now is the case. The Zelazny's went to Temple Emmanuel, and Ruby went to, I think, Congregation Sharith Israel. So, but they undoubtedly probably knew each other. The thing we'll never really know, I think, Paul's point early on in the presentation is the Warren Commission didn't touch us with a 10-foot pole. Had we known which laundry companies service which of these buildings, think about it. What's a very easy way to get something into a building? We'll have the laundry guy carry it in when he's bringing all this stuff in, and if it's a broken down rifle, he can hide it. I really thought the purpose of the laundry truck was the gunman who was firing, and maybe there were two, but the gunman in the Daltex building could break down his gun and put it in a laundry bag. He could go one way. The laundry man just carries it out and throws it up on top of the laundry truck. And there's no weapon to be found in the Daltex building. So again, we're spitballing because there's a lot of speculation here that you just don't know. But the laundry truck to me was always a very fascinating little detail, and could have been a very big detail, but we'll seemingly, I guess, at this point, never know. I thought that the mysterious death of Vincent Scotch, because he was a fairly young man, was very telling. And it made me, again, speculate that maybe did he die because, I mean, if somebody gets fired or somebody gets in an accident or, God forbid, somebody dies, you got a route salesman that you have to replace. So one of my questions was, what was Vince's route? Was he involved in any of the businesses on Elm Street, particularly in the Dealey Plaza area? And so by his sudden heart attack and death, now he gets replaced by somebody. It made me think of why Bill Greer was in the driver's seat in Dallas in the limo, is because Tom Shipman died mysteriously 5 weeks earlier, had a heart attack at Camp David. Again, we know all these mysterious deaths and we connect a lot of dots, but it's a very worthwhile area to be doing some research. So I think your effort, Paul, should be commended.
Thank you.
Mhm.
You guys want a fun tidbit?
Go for it,
Yes.
Paul. Always.
Is anybody here a golfer? Golfer. Okay, golfers. So here we go. The original incorporator, Jack Newell, his brother-in-law was Byron Nelson, the golfer.
Interesting. Yeah.
Oh, here's another one. Number 2, Mark Sutphin's wife. Mark Sutphin got married out in LA. In 1935, before she left, they had a bridal shower for her, and it was hosted by Ben Hogan.
Wow.
Mhm.
Last one. Harold Wickman that we believe got the account for Clean Towel. In college, at the University of Kansas, beat Sam Snead in a golf match.
Interesting.
That's the kind of stuff I kind of like.
There's a book there somewhere, Golfing Links to the Assassination. Nancy's made a comment, Paul, in the chat. Just said that Romack was the father of Virgie Rackley, and she mentioned that the Warren Commission asked him a lot of questions, but ignored her as an eyewitness.
Yeah, Jane, if you go look at Romack's testimony and how it started for him to get the testimony, he started off, he read, I'm forgetting the guy's name now that came out of the building, but he had heard that he had saw someone, and because he was back there, he said a racist statement and came to the FBI about what he saw. And if you read his testimony, and here's one I got for you guys. When Romack was stating in the back that he came up, Romack, now remember, we're talking about a K-Box radio reporter here. He comes up and Romack says later on, he talked with Pate between 25 and 30 minutes. Now, come on. You get the president of the United States being assassinated and you're shooting the shit with the report. It doesn't make any sense. So there's a lot of susceptibility in terms of what Romack is saying in his testimony.
Okay. Does anybody else want to make a question or a comment before we wrap up? Okay. Well, I'm just going to stop the recording. And before I do, I want to pass on all of our thanks, Paul. Thank you so much for this. It's been a great listening to you. And I'm sorry that James obviously had to jump off earlier on, but we're grateful as well that he joined you. And hopefully, Paul, we'll see you at some of our future DPUK meetings as well.
Okay.
Excellent.
God bless.
Thanks very much, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you.